The big giveaway in Philip Hammond's budget was the abolition of stamp duty for first-time buyers. But will it be enough to get young people on the housing ladder? And did the Chancellor do enough to help woo back younger voters to the Tories? Joining me now are Olivia Utley. She's news editor of Reaction, a media company that analyses politics, economics and culture, and Ellie Groves, who's the former national chair of the Young Fabians. Welcome to you both. So what do you reckon? I mean, the Tories need to win back these millennials. Do you think there was enough in the budget to make young people think again about maybe backing the Tories?
I'm not sure if it was kind of big and bold enough to really woo young people back. I think the stamp duty it's great that young people will actually have a bit more money in their pockets. But in the long run, I mean, any policy which aims to drive house building isn't really going to work unless you also build up the supply, and there was nothing to do with that. So I think on the whole it was a little bit too cautious to drive people back. But it wasn't a disaster, and I think some young people think, yep, there's something for me there, and might
you know, one often wonders about this budget. Do you actually think it makes any difference to you?
Well, yeah, actually, I think it probably does. I think the stamp duty, even if I don't think it's a particularly wise policy in the long run, if I buy, then it will actually help me. And I think that's what Hammond did quite well. There are quite a few little things which really will affect people.
Do you think it's going to make any difference?
I think that this budget kind of, they looked at the questions that young people are asking and tried to answer some of them in some ways. So this is an example of that. They kind of looked at the housing market and thought, we'll tinker with it a little bit, and we'll look at the stamp duty. It was obviously reduced as well. There were moments before the budget where it was thought about that it was going to be put at a lot higher house price, and so the 300,000 was a little bit lower than I think was expected. And also, at the end of the day, the policy looks at housing costs, but not house prices. So I think the OBR said that this could increase house prices by 0.3%, and it actually doesn't affect that many people. I think it's.
So what could have been done? I mean, what, you know, if people are thinking first-time buyers, the government's had various schemes. It had this bond for people saving a special ISA. What do you think could be done, or is that actually the right priority even?
Well, that's interesting. So I think, first of all, supply. You can't keep on building the mansions across London and not really looking at affordable housing in a proper way. And I think on the priorities, this budget has done nothing for productivity or to kind of reduce the deficit or the debt or actually look at wages. And
well, of course, Labour, you know, and Young Fabian, I mean, Labour would have increased the deficit and the debt more. They would have borrowed more.
But looking at investment is entirely different to not acknowledging that actually infrastructure investment can boost the economy. And even on freezing fuel duty, again, if the fuel duty wasn't frozen, the money that could be raised from that is actually the same amount of the deficit. So it's where the priorities are.
You think they got the wrong priorities? I mean, right and left are almost coming around to agreeing with each other.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I completely agree on the supply front. I think that if we're seriously going to address the housing crisis, then we've got to have a re-examination of the green belt. It just doesn't work, and it's. Young people passionately care about the environment, but I don't think many young people think that the green belt is the way ahead. It's made for sort of cool the midwife age with the smog in the centre of London. I think the way forward, and I think lots of young people would agree, is green patches over London. Just break down that idea of a strict green belt. I think that would have really helped. I think the glaring omission really is student loan repayment interest rates. Didn't touch it at all. And I'm in the first cohort. I graduated in 2015, so I'm the first cohort to pay 9k a year with hiked interest rates. And I got a job immediately after graduating, been paying back my loan for 2 years, and I'm now £587 further into debt than I was when I graduated.
Why? Because of the interest?
Because of the interest rates. And I mean, that just punishes aspiration, which is a mad policy.
So you think he should have done that?
Should have completely addressed that. I think that's somewhere where I think a lot of young people are actually very willing to pay for their education. I think a lot of young people understand that higher education is a private privilege as well as a public good, and are willing to pay for it. So I don't think Jeremy Corbyn's policy particularly appeals to all young people, but there needs to be something done about the interest rates.
I mean, the argument against doing anything about student fees is that, you know, half of young people don't go to university.
Exactly, and I think that that is a whole other conversation about what we do with education, and actually by cutting the stamp duty, the government actually has made it so they get less money in for themselves, so they can invest in education that isn't just looking at universities, but is looking at apprenticeships and meaningful studies.
But do you think it was the abolition or the proposed abolition of student fees which swung it for Jeremy Corbyn amongst young people?
I think that there were many factors that swung it with Jeremy Corbyn with young people, and I think that that played its part. But I think rejuvenating politics, offering hope, and I think that there were some fabulous Labour MPs that all went on the doorstep and all worked really hard and were able to utilise the youth. That I think there was a wider.
Well, I think we got a sort of cross-political spectrum agreement from you both that perhaps Philip Hammond could have done a bit more for the rising generations. Thank you both very much indeed.